1572, The Lost Expedition. This is a print and play game that I discovered on Board Game Geek as I was looking for small solitaire games that I could play on an airplane because I was coming to Italy, which is where I am right now, and that's where I'm filming from my parents' house in Italy. And I wanted a game that I could play on the airplane when my daughters were sleeping. And there are several games that are marketed as play on an airplane, especially Victory Point Games does that. But some of their games marketed as such don't really fit on the little tray on the airplane. And there's something more. For a game to be playable on an airplane, it doesn't just need to fit on the tray. It needs to be a game that you can pick up easily when the person next to you needs to go to the restroom. It needs to be a game that you can put away when the food comes, and then you can put back and start playing again, which is not that easy with games that have a lot of counters and things like that. This game actually works. It is a game that you can play on an airplane. All you need to do is this, a pen or a pencil and some dice, and you can put it away. You just write a thing or two to keep track of your stats as the food comes or the person next to you needs to go to the restroom. And then you put it back and you're ready to start again. The Lost Expedition, the subtitle tells you that this is a very ambitious game. It's a solitaire, well, that's not that ambitious per se, solitaire map building, storytelling, survival game. Well, lots of goals, that's the game tries to achieve, and I can tell you already, spoiling my conclusions, it is successful. It does all these things and it does them pretty well. Also, it is a game that is easy to print because you only have one sheet of paper. You need one each time that you play, so you make some copies, and then you have some 3 pages of rules, and it is black and white, doesn't consume much ink, and it also is for free, so good package there. The Lost Expedition. Your expedition of conquistadores was ambushed by the natives. Only 6 of you survive, and they are here at the beginning of the game. They're trying to make it to the coastline where they'll be able to signal for help. And they are moving through this area, which is largely uncharted. And it is a dice game. You use dice to resolve your actions. You start by placing dice on these boxes here. The dice are used to simply keep track of your score. And again, if you need to put the game away, you simply write here your present score on all these boxes and you're good. And then you put the dice back. You start with 6 conquistadores. That's simply the number of people that you have. You lose the game if you lose all 6. You have muskets that allow you to reroll dice. You have food that, guess what, you need to eat to survive. Morale, keep your people happy, well, they're not suicidally depressed. And also movement progress. You will not move each turn from X to X. You will move within each X, accumulating progress points until you have enough to move to the next hex, and then you spend the points you have doing that. At the beginning of the game, you pick up your dice. You have 5 dice, 5 d6s. You roll them, and you can re-roll any of your dice once. Then you resolve the dice. As you can see, there are tables here labeled from 2 to 6. Basically, each die that you roll allows you to roll on a table of the corresponding number. So if I roll the 2, I can roll on the 2 table. If I roll the 3, I can roll on the 3 table. Doubles don't allow you to roll multiple times, but they allow you to add a +1 to your roll. So if I have 2 2s, 1 2 I use to roll on the 2 table, and the other 2 gives me +1. Ones that you roll in your pool of 5 dice are wilds, so you can use them as any other die, which also means you can use them as doubles or triples to get you extra points because the bonuses are cumulative. If I have 3 2s, then it's like a 2 to roll +2 for each double, and each one could be added to that. So once I have my dice and I roll them and I have my bonuses, I roll on the tables that apply for that turn. Phase 2, movement. Now, the icons, you'll become familiar with them very easily. Some of them especially you use a lot. Some are not that common, and I'm not going to explain them to you, and actually suggest that you do not look them up before you start the game, so that you have some surprises as you play the game. At certain encounters, you'll be like, OMG, I had no idea that the jungle had that thing in it, which feels very thematic. But movement, that seems pretty easy. Well, guess what that symbol means? Yep, this symbol means that your morale went down. These symbols indicate that you accumulated progress, which is movement progress that you record there and that you will use to move later on in the turn. Then you map. If you have threes, you roll on this table, that tells you the type of terrain that you encounter in a hex adjacent to the X where you are, and that is still empty, that is still unmapped. Then you simply have you roll for the type of terrain that you encounter, you draw the corresponding symbol, and different symbols will give you different game effects. However, it's important to remember that you're not there yet. It's a little strange. I guess you get a sense, you send a little reconnaissance party, but you already have 6 people. How small can that party be? And you don't want to risk your people. But you get a sense of what's in your adjacent axis, even if you're not there yet. So that's for mapping. If you have no adjacent axes which are uncharted, you skip that phase. Exploring, also important. You can see that some of these tables will allow you to use a musket to reroll both dice. Again, you start with 6 muskets. They're a very important resource, but you do consume them as you go. When you're mapping, you cannot use muskets because that would make no sense that the terrain that you encounter would be affected by your use of muskets. But if you're exploring, well, having muskets around does help you, and so you have more flexibility and you get better chances of finding things that may be of interest to you. I'm not going to tell you what these symbols are, especially some of the more obscure ones. This one I can tell you because by telling you this and telling you that this means that there is an interesting thing that happens, an interest, and later you will roll on this table to determine what the interest is, and these are the symbols that I don't want to tell you what they correspond to. There is a typo here. It says phase 8. I corrected it, and by matching on the rollbook, phase 7 is the one where you roll on this table. If you have an interest symbol from this phase, or because you met one, you encounter one on the map. So explore and see what happens. Resolve the effects. The explanation for the symbols is in the rollbook. Phase 5, native conduct. Again, you can reroll with muskets, and again, I'm not going to tell you what happens. Hunting is when bad stuff may happen. You may even lose progress. You may get a fever, lose morale, and gain some food, or gain food and also possibly get morale. So this is for the standard thing from 2 to 6. Then again, you may have to roll on that interest. If you have an interest you need to resolve. Then you need to eat your rations, so you consume a unit of food from there. If you do not have food during this phase, you lose one of your men. Then you map travel, that is, you move to another hex, to an adjacent hex, if you have enough movement points, if you have collected enough progress points. Then there is phase 10, which is recommended. It is the journal entry, when you write an entry that describes the events of the present turn. This is a game that really is strongly story-oriented. It has an almost uncanny ability to tell stories, to create events. If it wasn't that I was on an airplane, I was tempted to actually do that and write a journal. But simply playing the game created a very interesting situation, created a very interesting story of struggle and survival, and well, other surprising things that happen. Then you need to adjust the morale. The morale will change at the end of each turn in phase 10 depending on the traveling that you did or did not. If you did not travel, you lose a point of morale. You're trying to go here, so moving in this direction lowers your morale, and moving closer to this direction, even in general terms, raises the morale of your people. If you have 0 morale in this phase, you lose a conquistador. Then finally, last phase of the turn, you cross off a day. You only have these many days to reach the coastline before, I guess, your galleon that you're trying to contact leaves for the old world and you get stranded forever in the new one. So there are two ways of losing the game: if you lose all of your men, or if you don't make it here by the end of the game. If you make it there, you win the game. And then you can also check your level of victory based on how many X's you mapped. So that's information you bring to the old world, and that allows you to score points. The more hexes that you mapped, the more points that you score in case you win. But winning, I found it wasn't all that easy. Not impossible. This is not one of the toughest games, solitaire games out there, but it's not all that easy either. Now I see this box and I realize I forgot something, which is at the beginning of the game, you roll to determine the type of expedition that you have. And different types of expeditions will have different modifiers and abilities. I guess you can also just choose one, especially if you want to try to play the game in different ways. And you can see what different types of expeditions do. 1572, The Lost Expedition. First thing, yes, it is a truly portable game. I mentioned the airplane setting, but really it is a portable game that if you have a die roller app on your phone, it could almost work as a handheld. And if you just write down things that you change there, then you fold it like this, hold your phone, write things down. It could almost be handheld, but it really can be played anywhere. In a hotel room, if you're traveling. It's a most perfect travel game. And as usual, what is the point of bringing a game with you if it is not fun? You will not have this problem with this game. Yes, it is a little, the mechanics are a little repetitive. Roll, see what happens, roll, see what happens, roll, see what happens. But players of games such as B17 or B29, these games that are based on rolling on tables to generate events, are familiar with the mechanics. And this type of game, roll on tables and generate events, have been successful for the last decade. So there definitely is an audience for this type of game. And I know that there's an audience for this one, and I belong to that audience because I like the strong storytelling element. Mechanically, it may feel repetitive. The space of decision that you have is not huge. There is a certain sense of being dragged by the story, not dragged in the sense of like slow pace, like it's boring, of being simply carried by the story, and that you go with the flow. There is only so much that you can do to alter the course of the events. Ultimately, you may have a game which is determined entirely by luck, and yet it will not be entirely unsatisfactory because that series of events has resulted in a particularly tragic event. It will feel like a horror movie, one of those horror movies where people are picked and removed from the group one after one. There is a Herzog movie which is about what's it called? Gira, I think. Somehow there is something of that movie in here. That's a tragic struggle of man versus nature and arrogant conquistadores versus natives that are not particularly welcoming, and they have some good reasons for that. So it's an interesting situation narratively, thematically. The game does a very good job of telling your story through the mechanics. Again, if you're simply looking for a clean Euro, one where you can optimize and maximize things, this is not it. But as a storytelling engine with interesting decisions, not many, but pretty powerful, then this is it. Speaking about the decisions, again, which ones do you have? The rerolls at the beginning of the turn, that is the biggest decisions I have to make, and then spending resources to get rerolls. Those are really the decisions that you make. Most of what you get otherwise is the game, is stuff that the game tells you, is storytelling that the game generates, starting from those information, from those bits of information that you gave to the system. It's a fun game. I really enjoyed it. Again, it's about storytelling. If you like storytelling, if you like intensely thematic games, if you don't like going through lists of icons for a couple of times at the beginning before you become familiar, this is a game that can give you a lot. It's a lot of advantages due to the many settings in which you can play it, how easily you can record where you are, put it away, start again tomorrow, fold it in your jacket, take it out at a moment's notice and play it again. Fun stuff. And again, the fact that it comes for free and it's very easy to assemble, you just need to print a couple of sheets of paper, is not a minus either. It's a big plus, actually. 1572, The Lost Expedition. When it comes to print and play games, those are not the most popular ones, not the ones that people have heard about. So my point when making these videos is not to see if this is a game that you want to purchase or not, they're also for free, but simply to bring them to your attention. This is a game that you may not have heard before, not heard of before. Now you have, and I hope you give it a try because it's a really fun game. Not for everybody maybe, but for the right audience, this is definitely a game that can give a lot and can tell you a powerful story. It can help you pass an hour or two engaged with a very interesting setting.